Hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden, better known as Vonnart Online, and today I'm going to show you how to do a textured gold leaf pattern on a canvas print. Now I did one already on how to do a solid gold leafing, and I'll put a video link wherever somewhere on the screen. But today is going to be a little different. Rather than actually sectioning out an area to be completely filled in, we're going to work with a sponge and create more of a textured gold look. So before we get into it, I'm going to go over my tools one more time. So I'm working with a normal metal leaf adhesive, and it's a glue, but I don't actually use the top, I just twist it off. I'll be pouring that into a bowl, and then I will be working with two paint brushes. This one to lay it out in kind of the more specific areas. This one to brush the gold away when we get to that point. And then the sponge, you can just find a fake sponge at any craft or hobby store as well. I wouldn't recommend using a kitchen sponge as much. You want one that has a bit more of a abrasive edge. And then lastly, I'm going to use just metal flakes. I like this better than the flat surface metal flake that they sell. Instead, I like it being more random. And especially for more of a textured look, it'll work better on the end result. So, you know what? Let's have this open, ready to go. There we are. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so for the glue, like I said, I'm just gonna pour it in a bowl. I'm gonna twist off the top. And you don't need a lot. So I'm gonna just pour a little bit in here. And then like I said in the last video, to stop any kind of leaking, I like to twist the bottle. See, that way it doesn't even get on the edge of the cap there. You get a nice clean pour every time. And this should be about the right amount for glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mixture of the paintbrush and the sponge. I'm going to use the paintbrush to go right up near the edge of the creature, and then I'll use the sponge to do sort of a gradient out, like a gradation of texture and gold. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And, oh, one second, this brush is not completely clean. All right, now I got a clean brush. Make sure your brush is clean before you do this. All right, so I'm gonna start more in the middle and then work my way out. That way I can rest my hand without worry of if there's glue on it or not. Now, actually, that was a pretty thick glob. You don't need a lot of glue when doing this. You want the thinnest layer possible. If it gets clumpy, the end result will look pretty messy because the glue takes a while to dry if you have it all clumped together. And if you put on the gold too soon, then it will result in the glue actually pulling up, which would ruin the gold leaf a bit. So like I said, I'm gonna edge out certain areas and I'm gonna use the sponge and just kind of dab it out. I don't recommend heavy dipping in the glue with the sponge, but a very light, that much is about good. And then work your way around the area that you want. Now when doing the paintbrush part, you do have to have more of a precision to the way you're doing it. And the toughest part about doing any type of gold leafing is you can't really tell where you applied it. So you kind of have to remember the areas that you're going down. Now, it was a lot easier on my last video to know because I had a circle that I had to fill in. But on here, where you can be a little bit more random, it can be tougher because until you lay the gold leaf on, it'll just look like you didn't do anything because the glue also dries clear. But the only thing you really need to worry about here is just making sure that you're not applying too much glue, but applying it enough in the areas that you want there to be some gold texture. Okay, so now that we have these two areas done, I'm gonna extend the gold because I want it to have more of a, not a completely random pattern. I kind of want like larger shaped chunks in the background that have more of like an organic edge to it, but still read as almost like a continental landmarks in a way. Just gonna lay that out. Get some glue. And kind of like I said in my last video, I don't necessarily wait till the glue, like I don't have a set time for how long I should wait for the glue to dry, but I usually wait at least 20 minutes. And I've definitely learned in the past that waiting longer can actually be more beneficial. So I think for this video, I might even wait longer than that, just to make sure we get a nice clean result. Now for this edge, I'm taking the paintbrush and with a really still hand, try to get a nice clean edge to it. And I always try to do the sponge after the brush. That way I know for sure I got a nice clean edge, and then the sponge can create a little bit more of a texture. Now there will probably be some cleanup work that we'll have to do after, and we'll just take some painter's tape and essentially like strip up the gold leaf after we do that. I don't want to rely on it too much though. That's why I don't want to make it seem like, oh, we're for sure gonna just rely on that. We can be as sloppy as you want. I try to keep it cleaner in this stage so that there's less cleanup work later on. I want to include that little bark that's been chipped away. Get right up in there. And you really don't have to worry too much about, am I laying enough glue? Because with this type of glue, the thinnest layer will do the trick. So you don't need a lot to make gold leaf happen. And what I also might do is I might do one pass here, see what it looks like, and then do another pass on areas that might need to be filled in a bit more. And we are outside, so if you're hearing some outside noises, that is why. I like gold leafing outside better than inside. I feel like this can be a really messy process, and I like the ability just to, if there's excess gold leaf, just to brush it off. And if you're someone that is responsible, I guess, you should definitely recollect all the gold that you're not using and then save it for a future one. But I guess, I don't know, I'm more of a nature boy, so I like being outside. And I definitely would pick a day that isn't windy though. That can ruin this whole process. Because not only is it really difficult to do the gold leafing, but then as you're just trying to get the gold leaves out of the bag to even do the process, it'll just blow right out and it'll be a problem. But on a day like this where it's slightly overcast, mostly sunny, no wind, birds are chirping, like what could be better? And I find this process to be extremely relaxing. It's like meditative in a way. Ooh, see, that was a bit too much glue. Got a little careless for a second. So I'm gonna try to spread that out, because So I really don't want a thick area of glue anywhere on here. Oops. Make sure the sponge doesn't have too much on it. Sometimes I'll do like little random spots just to break up the monotony. Sometimes I keep things too clean. But when working with a piece that is supposed to have more of a textured background to it, I'll throw in some extra little sponge dabs. Same deal. I feel like I'm doing a trampoline right now. And you really don't have to push down hard. I mean, it may shake as if I'm like punching the canvas right now, but I promise I'm like lightly dabbing it. Then I'll do some smaller work in here. And then I like to do some edging on the outer circle. I think it kind of creates a nice clean finish. Okay. Do little random spots here and there. And then let's see how our first pass turned out. Like I said though, I'm gonna wait about 25-30 minutes. So then I'm gonna pause this for the time being and we'll come back in about a half hour. Okay, so it's been about a half hour. As I can see, it looks pretty good. And by that, I mean I can't tell at all because it stays transparent. But I have a good feeling that this will work now. So I'm gonna open up my gold flake bag. Last time I just kind of tore into it, so this time I'm being a little more careful with how I do this. And I'm gonna spread it on a little thinner just because I've had a lot of people note that I was very wasteful in my last video. So I'm gonna try to be a bit better about that because I agree with you. If you can save your gold leaf, why not do your best to recover as much as you can? So as I'm noticing like there are these little flakes kind of below, so it's slightly more windy than it was this boarding. Ooh, that was a lot. That was way more than I wanted. I try to get a good amount down before the wind takes it. It's almost like I'm playing a video game, trying to capture these before they blow away. I don't mind a more layered texture look, and especially with one that is meant to be more messy. I'm gonna just continue kind of brushing it in different directions. And try to get it to stick. So I kind of remember like little areas that I did, but I can already tell like I don't know if I like how awkward that little segment looks right there, so I'll probably touch that up. Oh, that was a big gust. Well, and there goes my gold. I don't need to do a very delicate brush at this point. Man, I am horrible at pouring out like small amounts at a time. Something I will do my best to improve upon. I mean, thankfully, gold leaf isn't very expensive to begin with. Unless if you're using real gold, then yes, you will want to save as much as you can. And actually, I wouldn't even recommend doing it outside if you're working with real gold. So I am really liking, if you look at the edge of all the gold here, it has that nice broken up textured look, which was the point of using the sponge. So I'm glad to see that the results are actually turning out the way that it was intended to. And then, man, this brush apparently I've overused because I'm seeing some of the fibers, some of the actual brush part fall off. And depending on how well I did the edge work with my paintbrush will determine how well the edge looks here. Man, how come the wind always blows when I put like a big gob down? There's like nothing and then bam. That's okay. You gotta adapt to your situation. Oop, don't you dare blow away. Actually, I might keep the bag right here, so if wind blows, I'll just recapture it. See, I'm learning as I go. Yeah, it didn't quite work exactly. You can usually tell where the glue is because the brush will get kind of it'll get stopped momentarily while you're going through. You can feel the ruggedness. It's like I can tell there's some glue over here. Ooh, save it, save it. But yeah, I find this very calming. I don't know, I really like gold leafing. And as you can tell, it really isn't that difficult. It just takes a few times to like kind of understand how it reacts to the glue and how much to put on. Okay, so now I'm gonna close this, or else I'm gonna lose even more gold. So I'm gonna do more of a rough brush pass now. So when I'm doing this, I like to be a little more, I don't push into the canvas, but I'm being a little more forceful with how I am spreading it. And then if there's a clump like this, where you can tell there's a lot of just gold foil kind of built up, be a bit more aggressive in taking it out. And then you always want to go from like every which direction. That way if any of the gold leaf is kind of flaring up, the brush will be able to capture that. And then after this is all done, you'll want to get all the bristles out that the brush decided to leave behind. Yeah, normally I have this brush is not as good as my last one. And I feel like when you do this kind of stuff, you learn over time the best tools to work with, what worked, what didn't work. So if you want to start gold leafing your stuff, just honestly start doing it, because your first few attempts may not be the greatest, but with a lot of practice, you'll get it. And gold's such a nice accent to really make your images pop even further. All right, I'm gonna do one more pass. So then on the final pass, I'm gonna quickly clean my brush like this, and then do more like a polish. So like there's definitely a clump right here. I'm gonna wanna polish that out. So small circles will eventually push it like that. Because you don't really want, unless if you're going for that look where you want a lot of buildup, but personally I like to keep it to more of a minimum. This is the one time I actually do like the wind. It like helps out. Turn your disadvantages into your advantages, as they say. Sometimes this process can take a little longer just because you really want to make sure that there's no random excess that is just kind of hanging on. Let me look at it from afar. Actually, I kind of like it. I might add just a little bit in some areas, but I'm actually pretty happy with the first pass. There's a good clump there. And the sponge really does give it that nice breakup of texture, which is what I was looking for. And they're really cheap, so you don't have to use a really fancy one. I think I'm just using a decorative, it's like a 50-cent sponge. So they're really not that expensive. This whole process really isn't that expensive. Okay, so I'm gonna do some cleanup work doing the exact same process I just did, and then I'll show you guys the final result. Or you know what, maybe I'll time-lapse this so you can still see how to fix this up. Yeah, you know what, I'll do that. So just bear with me for this part. So as you can see, I'm going back in with my brush and I'm just edging out the circle better than it was. And I didn't want to rush it, so I am actually waiting a full half hour before coming back to it. And I'm telling you right now, it's very important that you let the glue dry. And if you don't, it will clump up, and then when you brush on the gold, it will like pull up and it'll just be clumpy. It looks like boogers. And that's another reason why you want to apply as thin of a layer as possible when you're doing the glue, but you do want to be giving it enough time to actually dry correctly. So now, as I come back, I'm going to be placing the gold on, and since I really didn't have that much to edit, I'm just brushing on the edges and the small little areas that I cleaned up, and then it should be good to go. Okay, so there you go. Do one more pass everywhere. Make sure all the polishing is done. And there are times where you may think it's done, and then you'll look at it like an hour later and be like, well, there is definitely a little clump. So if you gotta go back and do a little editing, that's okay. I just really wanted to clean up the edges. It looks much better. And there we go. So, there we go. And as a little bonus, I also did another canvas while this one was drying. So as an extra little treat, you can see me do my little moon spiritus. This one I had the same type of idea with the Ascension, the tree, where, ooh, that was a lot. That was way too much. Oh, please no wind right now. Please no wind. Oh my gosh, get back in the bag. Get back in there. Where I want it to be more textured and random. And since this didn't even have like an outer shape to work with, I'm just working around the moon that's in the background. So when I used the sponge, I was very careful not to actually place it on the moon, but definitely in the area around the moon. Ooh. Oh, I don't want to lose these bigger chunks. Sometimes if you just like anchor them into areas that you know there's glue, they'll kind of stay in that place as long as you don't brush too much of it away. Oh, that was a lot. Oh, there we go. See how it like anchors it? So I guess you gotta be a little quick. But my #1 recommendation if you're gonna do this is do not pick a windy day. I mean, you could do this inside, but I just find it so messy, and I live with so many people that I don't want to become the messy one in the house. Oops. Forgot that I might be blocking the camera view with my head. Ooh, yeah, I like how this one turned out too. Sometimes with random gold leafing, it just has a cooler effect because it's not trying to be perfectly edged out. It almost just adds a nice little bit of gold texture. I feel like it just acts as an accent more than like a main piece. So I'm gonna do some polishing, and I don't think I'm gonna really do that many touch-ups on this. I actually like how this one turned out. And to get more of these soft areas where there's just like a speckle of gold, that's where you're pushing really light with the sponge. Okay, let me do one more sweeping pass here. Polish out any of these areas. They're a bit clumpy. Get rid of all those bristles. Okay. Let me show you guys. Oops. The end results. Grab my phone. So here's one. I don't know if this is upside down. Does it go this way? There we go. So here's one, and you can see how now we got that little accented crescent there. And then the other one has a nice little extra textured gold foil as well. So that was my second tutorial on gold leafing. Once again, I definitely recommend you guys do this. It really is simple, and once you get the hang of it, it becomes a joy to do. So I hope that was helpful, and let me know what you think. Bye, take care.